Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and this is the Storyteller Forecast for Leo for February 2017. Go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com, see what's new on my blog, including a just released or soon to be released series called Astrology and Crystals. So what's going on in the month of February for Leos, and in general, we have a very powerful month with the eclipses. Bum, bum, bum. That's what I always think of when I think of eclipses, because they just come in like this, crazy big thing with big feet stomping on things and just like tearing up the place. And sometimes that is a good thing, because it weeds out things that you've been trying to release, to get rid of, to get past. And sometimes it's unwelcome, and we just don't know how that's going to be. But we do know that because this is an eclipse cycle right in the middle of, it's a Leo Aquarius eclipse cycle. We're ending the Pisces Virgo eclipse cycle that started at the beginning of 2015 with the solar eclipse on February 26th, the new moon in Pisces, and we'll talk about how that will likely affect you. But we still are right plumb in the middle of this Leo Aquarius eclipse cycle. And when you have an eclipse cycle that's in your sign, you are getting worked on every single level to the ultimate degree. So every aspect of your life is having a chance to be reworked over the next couple of years, or 2016 into 2017. So there are some themes that are specific about the eclipse cycle that has to do with yourself versus your relationships, how you are in relationships, how you are on your own, things that you could be doing to heal weak links within yourself and within your relationships and adding power to your relationships. But in general, there's just any aspect of Leo's lives can be completely reworked, and that's what's happening. Now, we do have astrological potentials that seem like they don't result in anything. I'm sure you have either experienced or heard someone talk about how all of these potentials were there and nothing happened for them. It's kind of like if you have ingredients on a counter to make burritos and you come back into the room and the ingredients are still there, but the burritos aren't there, and you get mad and say, "Where are the burritos?" Well, you didn't make the burritos. You had the ingredients right there and you didn't make them. Sometimes eclipses bring things right to you based on work that you've done or based on just what is coming to you. And you don't even have to do anything and they just show up, for better or worse. But there are many, many, many different aspects of not only eclipses, but every astrological transit that needs the key ingredient of your active will, of your engagement, of your taking an active role in your destiny. So there are all these astrological ingredients on the table to create alchemy in every area of your life. And if you walk out of the room and you don't do anything with the ingredients and you come back in, you can't really get mad that you didn't change your life because you had the ingredients to do that. And that's what these eclipses are screaming. They're saying you have everything you need coming to change every aspect of your life that you want to. What are you going to do with it? So it's pretty exciting. It's scary. It can be daunting, but it's pretty exciting too. The solar eclipse, as well as a massive amount of other energy, is occurring for the early degree placements and for the middle degree placements in the 8th house. Now, the late degree placements are actually going to have the solar eclipse in the 7th house, and some of you middle degree placements will actually have that in the 7th house as well. But what I'm about to describe with my theme of the month for Leos is true for all early, middle, and late, because that 8th house is full for all of you in some way. And the 8th house has to do with magic. Magic is a word that can be very much misunderstood and people could have blocks against it. When I say magic, I mean the unseen realms, the unseen occurrences. The things that happen that completely defy logic. There's the world of logic, which you could call the world of muggles, and there's the world of magic, which you could, you know what that world is. And the way that I describe those two worlds are the world of logic is the 10 to 20% of the iceberg that sticks out of the water. And the magic is the 80% that you don't see, that's sitting there, bigger than the tip of the iceberg, taking up more space energetically, having more potential. You can't see it. You know, it's a really bizarre thing about humans. They don't think twice about making a cell phone call, having the cell phone beam up energy to the, you know, cell tower, to the satellite, down to another cell tower in a different country maybe, and to another cell phone. You don't really think about it. You take it for granted. You can't see that's going on, but just because you don't see it going on, does it mean it's not happening? No. And this is what's going on all the time. Whenever science makes a discovery about something, that thing was happening all along, just out of our conscious awareness. And so this time for early, middle, and late degree Leo placements is a time to invite in the magic. So you have an opportunity to do that. And you have an opportunity to call it whatever you want, call it the miracles, call it spirit, call it God, call it whatever, to speak to that place, to invite in that place that is lesser seen. So also in this house, the 8th house, and this again is true for all of you, it has to do with psychology, parapsychology, astrology, deep mysterious studies, mystery schools. It could just be textbook psychology as well. It has to do with capital, financing, funding, money. You know, money is in the 8th house because it's kind of this unseen weird thing. You know, what really goes on with the money in the financial systems is just, it's totally bizarre how not based in anything it really is, which is perfectly fitting that it's in the 8th house like that. So getting money for things, money for school, money for paying off debt, borrowing money, getting a house, having a loan, loaning money, anything having to do with a shared relationship with resources is what's opening up for all of you, but there's a special extra focus on all of this for early and some middle degree placements. So the early degree placements are basically the first 10 days of the sign. And so that's like, you know, well, it's different. It's not the same every year, and that's why it's confusing. You can't give exact dates, but just essentially the first 10 days of the sign, or the first 0 to 9 degrees if you're watching for your rising sign. The middle degree placements are from 10 to 19 degrees, or for your rising sign, or the next 10 degrees or days in the sign, like the birthday, you know, the first 10 days of the sun in Leo is early, the next 10 days is middle, and the last 10 days of the Leo sign is late. And so 20 to 29 degrees is late. So that's what's going on. You know, these solar eclipses open up massive opportunities. So even though we're ending a Pisces Virgo eclipse cycle that has been going on since the beginning of 2015, something's coming to conclusion, something that was brought up then is coming to an end or nearing an end. Sometimes there's 4 to 6 months after the actual event for it to integrate. But it's ending with an opening, you know? It's kind of like the next chapter in the next book. It's like that book ends, and then the next chapter in the next book opens. You know, there's never any ends really without beginnings. And that's what the eclipse cycles are like. So for the sun, middle, and the rest of the later degree placements, this solar eclipse energy has this massive opening in your 7th house, which has to do with relationships. See, the 7th and 8th houses are both about relationships. So it's very similar with what's going on for all of the placements. But this is just more about the actual relationship and less about the resources, you know, not like you and your stuff, just you and the other person. So while the eclipses are going on, the Venus retrograde is ramping up. Venus rules love, beauty, and money. And that is a factor. So you definitely want to watch my Venus retrograde do's and don'ts video. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail here later, when also I'll go into the days that have sweet energy and the days that have challenging energy in February. I want to talk a little bit about the lunar eclipse first. The lunar eclipse is a full moon in triplicate. So just like the new moon is like a new moon times 3 opening, the full moon is a full moon ending, completion, drama, coming to fruition. Sometimes something you've been seeking or working on comes together in a big way, or ends in a big way, or completes in a big way. And it can be happy, it can be bittersweet, and then sometimes eclipses can bring in something that ends that's unwelcome, that you didn't want to end, that is totally out of your control. Most Leos will experience this full moon eclipse, this something coming up that needs attention. That's like the major tagline of something of a lunar eclipse. Something's coming up that needs attention. And the thing that needs attention is your physical body, or a health malady, or your image, or what you're presenting out into the world, or what you're calling yourself, what you're doing with your life that you're presenting out to the world. So there could be some drama or confusion or discouraging energy around that. Or it could be that something you've been working on for so long comes to fruition and you're in the limelight. It's also very common that a full moon in Leo, especially when it's in your first house, will bring you into the limelight. So there's an equal chance for a positive effect of a full moon as there is a negative one. It just tends to be emotional. And in a world of people trying to avoid their emotions, that tends to err on seeming like it's not a positive thing, The late degree placements are going to have this fullness, completion, fruition happening within their 12th house. And the 12th house has to do with the mental state. This is also another water house, the 8th house that we were talking about, inviting in the magic. The 12th house is very similar in that way because it's another water house. So meditation, a spiritual breakthrough, an important dream, a breakthrough with lucid dreaming. If you've never done lucid dreaming, where you become aware that you're dreaming in a dream, you can actively work on this and use it for a spiritual healing tool. So you could have something happen there, or it could just be a mental upset or breakdown, some mental stress. So if you're prone to have mental stress or issues, you definitely want to be proactive. And don't run yourself ragged. Don't think just because you're doing well, you can get off your regimen. It's very important to keep up doing what you're doing around this time because you have to keep your weak links strong. Many people will joke about not sleeping. Maybe during the day they're running and they're eating green juice and they're doing all this stuff and they say, oh, well, I don't sleep very well. When you don't sleep well, you're not getting REM sleep and you're not healing. When you don't get enough REM sleep, your body creates inflammation, which counteracts all the good that you're doing during the day. So this could bring to your attention that you have to focus on sleep. And there are sleep studies now that you can do at home that insurance usually covers, by the way, if you're in a situation where you can't or don't want to go out for a sleep study, because there are many people who have undiagnosed sleep apnea and it has to get addressed. Someone that has mild sleep apnea can actually help themselves tremendously before they have to get a CPAP machine. They can get breathe right strips. Breathe right strips, you can get them at Walgreens or whatever. You can get them on Amazon. And there are strips that you put on your nose that improve your breathing in the night, and you might actually be able to solve your sleep problem with like $10 breathe right strips instead of going through and getting a CPAP machine. Now, some people have a further developed situation and they need more medical help, but there's a vast majority of people out there that are not sleeping that could be assisted by something as simple as this. And when you have a full moon here, it's like, it's putting it in front of your face. You need to sleep more. You need to sleep better. Something's happening in your sleep that you need to know about, something like that. Okay, I'm calling the general theme of this month for all signs, the tiptoe water test. When you go to the beach or somewhere where there's water, and rather than just jumping right into the water, you stick your toe in, just the tip of your toe, to see what the water temperature is. And unless you're in a very warm climate, usually the water is kind of cold, right? And so maybe you have to put your feet in and then get up to your knees. It makes me think of when I was little. I grew up in New York City, and my cousin, who was like a sister to me more than my cousin, and she was a little bit older than me, and she would taunt me, and she'd say, stop being such a sissy, just jump in the water. And if you've ever gone swimming in the Atlantic Ocean, it's very cold. So I would put my toe in and say, oh gosh, I don't want to go in, and then it would take me time to get used to it. And then she would jump right in. And I'm not saying that in general there's one way of being better than the other. But when we're talking about astrological rhythms at play, this is very poignant because there is a time to jump right in. And there's a time to do the tiptoe water test and go in and get used to it with your ankles, and then slowly go in and get used to it with your knees, etc. And that's the time that we're working with in February, because even though we technically don't have any planets, personal planets, meaning the ones closest to us, like Mercury, Venus, Mars, are usually the ones we talk about being retrograde, the personal planets, we don't have any of that happening technically in February. But we just got past Mercury retrograde and its shadow period, and we've started Venus retrograde shadow period. Venus goes retrograde from March 4th through April 15th. Venus retrograde happens around every year and a half. I definitely recommend you listen to my Venus retrograde video, because Venus rules love, beauty, and money. So everything about relationships and finances and business decisions and artistic journeys, and beauty decisions, all are housed under this Venus retrograde energy, even in February, because the shadow period has started. So I go into a massive amount of detail about what to do, what not to do, and why in that video that I'm not going to cover in this. So you definitely need to listen to that as a supplement to this video, and really pay attention to that for February, March, and April. So when we're in a shadow period of a retrograde, like we are in February, right? It doesn't go retrograde till March 4th, but the shadow period started at the end of January. So the whole month of February, every day we get closer to March, is getting deeper in this Venus retrograde energy. It's kind of like when you go to the beach. If you haven't crossed over the bridge yet to the island that the beach is on, you start seeing little beachwear, tourist places and little tiki huts and things that feel beachy, but you're not at the beach yet, but the beach vibe is there, So that's what a shadow period is like. It's like it starts acting as if you're there, even though you're not officially. And it's very relevant because the same rules pretty much apply for the shadow period as they do for the retrograde. And that is to not jump into anything that's a long-term commitment if you can possibly help it. Now, this is doubly so because this is a rule of the retrogrades, and this is also one of the things that we talk about with eclipses. February holds 2 eclipses. We have a full moon eclipse on February 10th, and we talked about that some. That's the lunar eclipse at 22 degrees of Leo. And we've got that solar eclipse on February 26th, that's at 8 degrees of Pisces. So when we talked about that as well, so the general energy of eclipse is kind of like that be the spider energy. You weave your web and then you let things come to you. And you act as is necessary, but not unnecessarily and not without caution. So that's the story of the energy of February is, you want to tiptoe in, you want to get used to the water, you want to try things on. It's a wonderful time for going back over things. So anything that starts with the word or the prefix RE, redoing, resting, couples therapy is something that's amazing for retrogrades. Going back to romantic places that you've been with your partner before, bringing the magic back, spending more time with your partner, anything that you're kind of returning back to within your relationship. And it doesn't have to only be a challenging thing. Sometimes Venus retrograde can bring up arguments and problems. If there are weak links in your relationship or your money space, they're going to show up because that's the job of the retrograde. But if there's sweetness there as well, then sometimes a return of the magic occurs. So it's a good time to spend more time with your honey. It's not the best time to take on a new romantic relationship or a new financial relationship if you can help it, because you have these rose-colored glasses on as it relates to money and love and beauty and artistic things, expensive items and things like that. You're not seeing clearly, so you don't want to make big decisions. But trying things on, experimenting, making small decisions, being cautious is great. Learning and education is wonderful. Trying on something for a new profession, getting some information or education that might prepare you to do something in the future. All of that is fine for the retrogrades. We just want to keep our commitments to between 4 and 6 months if possible, you know. Also goes, the same goes for a move. If you have to move or you're trying to do something different, when you move someplace, go into temporary lodging, you know. Don't get there and then buy a house, you know. You're not seeing clearly is the whole point. And when Venus goes direct, you'll look at everything totally differently. So you want to make sure there's wiggle room with the arrangements you've made so that when you see things differently, you're not locked into too much that you then can't shift. See, that's part of the point. So it's an artist's wonderland. Retrogrades are wonderful for doing art. And they can even be great for selling art, especially when you're going back to people or doing things before that you've done for promoting it. Backing up files is one of the single most important things you can do during any retrograde. So many people are going to have their important things lost during retrograde. So if you want to spend the time doing this proactively, I always make these, do these videos early so that you can get prepared for the time. As soon as you're hearing this, it would be good for you to be backing up files. And backing up anything and seeing to security and just kind of getting everything, all your ducks in a row that way. Some sweet energies that will be present, and you can see more about why I'm calling these sweet energies, what planets are at play, etc. when you sign up for my free email newsletter. So if you go to anniehelpsyou.com and you sign up for my free email newsletter, I do a write-up a month early, a written version of the energies ahead with more details about what goes on the certain days that make certain days bring sweetness, and then the challenging days. So the sweet energies are on the 9th, 10th, 11th, 13th, 14th, 16th, 20th, 21st, 23rd, and 26th. Okay, so 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 16, 20, 21, 23, 26. Now also remember when I give you these dates that we can experience transits before or after the actual day they occur. So it's like the days around these days, you can feel the energies that are true to the transits occurring on those days. Before I give you the challenging days, I also want to remind you, if you have already signed up for my free email newsletter and you're not receiving my monthly reports, there is some sort of glitch in many email services that put group emails into your social or promotions folder. So I send these things out like clockwork, like around a month early. Every month I always have, and I will continue to do this. So if you're not getting them, it's possible that they're going either to spam, to your social or promotions or events folders, and you're not even aware of it. So look in those folders and do a search for Annie Botticelli. And you should find some there, very likely. And then you move them into your inbox to let your Gmail or whatever it is, Gmail is infamous for this, know that you want those things into your inbox. Okay, so I've had this happen quite a bit. Okay, so the challenging days are the 2nd, the 5th, 10th, 22nd, 26th, and 27th. 2nd, 5th, 10th, 22nd, 26th, 27th. You might notice that some of these dates are ones I listed for the nice transits, and that is true because there are some challenging aspects that are happening at the same time as there are sweet aspects. So you might get, a mixed bag there. So the themes for the month: tiptoe water test, avoid the deep plunge, try things on, do things short term. You can make decisions as they relate to moving some things along, but not big launches, not big new things, not investing tons of money unless you have it to spare. Definitely check out my Venus retrograde video so you can understand more. The fact that Venus is in Aries through the month is going to make people want to be rambunctious and impulsive, and that's adding to this energy where you're going to want to do something, and it may or may not be the best thing to do. So be the spider, let things come to you and leave wiggle room with how you activate those potentials. Definitely go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com, see my offerings. I teach an astrology apprenticeship program, a course on creating successful online business if you want to be free of your geography and work online. I also have a new coach certification course that includes my online business course if you'd like to be a coach as your profession. I always have new things on my blog. So check it all out at anniehelpsyou.com, and I will see you next month. Bye.